Pixar is known as a studio that can animate anything and make it look good. They can make plastic dolls exciting. They can make you empathize with two nearly wordless robots. They can make a house feel like a person. But here's what they can't do. They can't make Cars look good. The movie is pretty enough, but it's just not interesting or dynamic to watch. And I don't really think that's Pixar's fault exactly, because the choice to make this movie be about anthropomorphic cars in the first place made it almost impossible to create a compelling animated piece. So that's this video. Why Cars shouldn't have been about cars. So let's get started. Reason number one why Cars shouldn't have been about cars. Cars don't make for expressive environments. Okay, look at this scene toward the beginning of Up. It's almost totally stagnant, nothing is moving, not much is happening. But we can learn and feel so much when we watch it. Why? Because of the objects in Carl's house. He's surrounded by all these old things, photo albums, a bookshelf, and next to him there's a chair that has the same general shape as his late wife. And so we know more about him, not because of what he says or does, but because of where he is. Compare that to Cars, where the subjects of the movie are just too big and unwieldy to make for environments that have emotional impact.
I shouldn't have to put up with this.
Cars in this movie can be in one of two places: expansive exteriors like roads and vistas, or mostly barren interiors like the courthouse or the tire shop.
I am filled with tears of ecstasy.
Neither of these two sorts of places tell us a lot about the characters, what they like, who they are. This problem is made all the worse because of how few things a car interacts with in its daily life. What do they need? Tires? Oil? Wax, I guess? There's just so few objects that can fill the rooms of this movie. So few physical things that can be used to express or build character. But, okay, the movie doesn't use environment to build character, but that can be fine, right? There's other ways for environments to be expressive. Like, look at this other scene in Up. This doesn't build character or anything, but it's super fun to watch, and I think that's mostly because of the way scale is used here. There's so many objects of different sizes in this scene. The house is a big thing, under that is a kid, a much smaller thing. Then there's Kevin, who's much larger than the rest of the cast, and there's the sweeping vista behind them. It's great to watch.
Russell won't notice.
But in this respect, again, Cars fails. By and large, objects and characters in the movie are the same size. They're car-sized. Sometimes the car-sized things are set against buildings, sometimes they're set against landscapes, but there's never a real feeling of depth to them. Even the houses are always oddly small, so there's no contrasting shapes and sizes to enjoy. Let's move on. Reason number two why Cars shouldn't have been about cars. Cars don't make for expressive characters. To some extent, this one is obvious. I mean, cars don't have opposable thumbs, they can't pick up things or use a lot of tools. But we can't underestimate how important those things are for building character. Look at this scene in Elia Kazan's On the Waterfront. Look how Marlon Brando plays with this glove so tenderly and then sits on a swing. He doesn't have to say anything to convey his emotional state. All he has to do is use the objects around him.
So how often do you get in here?
And cars just can't do this. They can only sit there or roll around. When they're sad, all they can do is look sad. They can't act the part. But it's not just that cars can't interact with objects, they also can't interact with each other. I think the most obvious place we can see this problem is when the characters feel affectionate towards each other. There's one kiss in the movie, right here, and it's just so awkward to look at. It feels so unresponsive. When two humanoids kiss each other, it's great to watch because of how much the body changes, because of how much is conveyed. Like, look at how radically different these two movie kisses feel. This one is timid, filled with pent-up passion. This one is triumphant and joyful. And we experience that severe difference because of what their bodies and faces are doing. How does a car touch another car? If they kissed on the lips, it's not like their bodies could do anything, they just have to stand there while their weird metallic lips smush against each other.
McQueen and Sally, part beneath the tree.
I kinda wanna see that, but that's not the point. There's no way for characters to show affection for each other in a way that's believable or expressive. And then there's dancing. In one scene, Mater says,
May I have this cruise?
and so clearly we're supposed to see cruising as a substitute for dance. But like, this isn't dancing. Dancing is fun because people's bodies can make such cool shapes and connect with each other in interesting ways. This is just cars doing what they've been doing this whole movie. Driving, but, you know, slower. Cars just can't interact with each other or their environments expressively, and it makes the whole film feel samey and dull. It's not even just that cars can't do anything. They also can't occupy space in a dynamic way. Part of what makes people and animals so fun to watch is that they can change the size and shape of their bodies to express the mood of a scene. Look at Rocky's body in these two scenes. Here he's slouched over, small. We're made to feel like there's an insurmountable obstacle that he's not prepared to face.
Who am I kidding? I ain't even in the guys' league.
But here, look how big his body is. He's so stretched out that his hands shoot over the skyscrapers. He feels good and inspired, and so do we. But cars can't change their size. They can't feel bigger or smaller, so again, they fail to express a lot with their bodies. I'm gonna move on to my third point. Cars shouldn't have been about cars, because cars don't make for expressive shots. There's a dearth of shot variation in Cars, and I think that's partially just because of the way cars are. How do you take a close-up of a car? Its mouth and eyes are so far apart from each other that getting both in the same frame requires a medium. How do you take a low angle of a car when, if you go too low, you're stuck seeing its weird underbelly and mouth? You can't express a lot with a subject if you're forced to shoot it from the same flat angle all the time. It'll always have the same shape and the same dimension. And how are they supposed to block these giant machines? How can they place them in interesting ways to make for expressive interactions? Like, look at this scene. Here, Lightning McQueen starts off the scene on top.
How could a car like you quit at the top of your game?
But then the scene shifts. Doc takes the upper hand and gets the last word when he says,
They quit on me. When I finally got put together, I went back expecting a big welcome. You know what they said? Your history.
But how is this change in tone expressed in the way the characters move? Well, it's not. The characters basically stand in the same places for the whole scene. It doesn't look terrible, it just doesn't say a lot. I mean, compare this scene to a really great moment from Rocky. Look how big Paulie starts off, how imposing he is.
Both of you get out of my house!
And then the tone shifts and Adrian's on top.
I cook for you, I clean for you, I pick up your dirty clothes!
Suddenly she's shot in low angles. She's the imposing one, both in the script and on the screen. Look, I don't want to pretend that the decision to have Cars be about cars is the only problem with the movie. Generally, it's a pretty bad film. The characters are one-dimensional, the idea sounds like it came from the mind of an executive and not an artist, and maybe it's just me, but I find the whole America used to be better message really insufferable.
The world was different. Oh yes, it was.
Ugh. But it's rare to find a movie that was so defeated by its concept. Rare that one decision at the beginning of development, let's make a movie about anthropomorphic cars, can have such a negative effect on a movie. If Cars had starred people or animals or toys, it wouldn't have been great, but it would have been better. And that's weird to think about. So that's this video. Like, comment, and subscribe, and try to find out where I am in real life. People online can be much easier to track down than you might think. See you next time.